And let's talk about dating specifically. The racism that is quite frankly normalized. Not masculine, creepy, smelly. There is some like actual evidence. South Asian men right now are going through a really difficult time, leading them to have an array of mental health issues and complexes in society, which is just hurting them in the end. We are going to explore the reasons why this is and what we can actually do about this. As we've seen in media and online, I think it's brown man's turn to be negatively shown in society. I think it's our turn to be made fun of. All the other racism that has occurred in the past with other racial groups, it's started to change. They've started to make a positive image of themselves, but I think right now the ones that are most subjected and most made fun of online and the racism that is quite frankly normalized is towards South Asians, especially South Asian men. It's very, very normalized actually, to the point where you'll see out and about in life people will be making racist jokes against brown people, and online it is very, very common. You know, go open up Instagram and it's everywhere. I can see how a lot of these images and stereotypes in society has started to affect many young South Asian men, not even just young, like older ones as well. It has really, really negatively impacted them, at least in my opinion, as far as I've seen. And I wanted to just explore the reasons why I think this is and what we can actually do to counter this. Now, there are some very, very strong stereotypes when it comes to particularly Indians, because they're like the biggest South Asian group according to like population and popularity as well. So everyone just says Indians, but it includes Pakistanis and Bengalis and even Sri Lankans and Nepalese people. So all of these groups are affected by all of this, but you know, we'll just stick to saying Indian or South Asian, whatever. They're very, very strong stereotypes against them, and these stereotypes we've seen in media with characters like Raj from Big Bang Theory. Someone who can't talk to women, someone who is a bit of a pervert and nerdy, has no riz, no personal hygiene. That's a really big one that you'll see everywhere. People are saying, oh, Indian smell, Indian smell. It's a very, very like a common hateful narrative towards them, which is quite funny because like I live in the West, I live in the UK, and as far as I've seen, all groups of people, there are people with bad personal hygiene. It's not necessarily Indians specifically that have that problem. So the main stereotypes usually associated with these Indian brown guys are that they're nerdy, not masculine, creepy, smelly, and overall, as we're seeing with the anti-Islamic rise as well in the West, along with that plus the Indian hate that already exists, it's not looking good. Previously in society, the scapegoats in Western society at least were East Asian men. As we saw, a lot of East Asian men were deemed as nerdy, couldn't pull any girls, not masculine at all, and that they were just generally weaker members of society. This was a very, very popular and normalized rhetoric in just like a decade ago, and it's still a little bit like this, but it has started to take a turn, as we've seen with the rise of better representation in Western media of East Asian men, and now the rise of K-pop and stuff as well, where East Asians have suddenly now started to seem a little bit more attractive, and I'm talking about exclusively the men. But Indians, they're still in the same boat in Western society. We're not seen as masculine, we're not seen as, and oftentimes we're just seen as less than. At least this is what I'm saying. Like, obviously most of this is generalized and it's not as strong of a thing as maybe I'm conveying it, but you will notice this a lot. It's led to complexes, particularly like an inferiority complex, or where they've become very, very insecure about their identity, leading them to do all sorts of things like become more isolated, or then them being weird towards girls and around girls, which doesn't really help with the stereotypes. Now, of course, this is just anecdotal evidence which I've seen, personally experienced, or just observed. However, there is some actual evidence. For example, in New York, there was a study done on dating apps, and it was proven that like brown men, Indian men are the least swiped on race, which interesting. Like, I think you could see how these negative stereotypes, which are quite strong, have actually led to a lot of like real life consequences in the dating like sphere as well. And we also see these videos where people ask, oh yeah, what's that one race that you wouldn't date, and everyone's just proudly saying Indians, brown guys, brown girls. And let's talk about dating specifically, because as I know, a lot of brown men, their biggest challenge is that they idealize Western white women, put them on a pedestal, and then at the same time they believe, oh, I can never date them, I'm inferior to them. It sounds weird to say, but honestly it is true. Like I've personally observed this in people. They put white women on a pedestal and then they put themselves down here. It really does not help anyone. If you go to India or Pakistan or any of these countries as well, it's very popular for people over there to even like idolize, worship these like white Western women and want to date them and everything. And I think this sort of comes into Western society as well, where we've got this with narrative about these like old Indian uncles that are always messaging these Western women being like, please show me your Bob's vagine, this and that. It's, you know, it's funny, but it's true, and it doesn't help the stereotyping in any way. Now I want to talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy. I really do believe that these stereotypes keep reinforcing themselves, and it's because these stereotypes, for example the nerdy ones, they can't get any girls, these sorts of stereotypes lead to people actually becoming a bit resentful or insecure or isolated from groups of people, and leads to them further not actually breaking out of these stereotypical norms, which is like, oh, you can't pull girls, you're nerdy, you're insecure, you're less than, basically. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? You're going to be subject of bullying, so you will end up being someone who just keeps fitting that role, to be honest. And another reason I think that the self-fulfilling prophecy is reinforced, other things that bring harm to these brown men in society, it's that we are often babied by our mothers and not actually thrown out into the world challenges, and we're not really forced to make our social skills up to a certain standard, gain life skills. Like I've seen so many brown guys, especially these ones that come fresh off the boat, mate, like there's a lot of skills that they lack in, especially social skills and social awareness, and I think it is because of them just being babied by their mums. I think having normal relationships with girls is also very discouraged in Indian, Pakistani, Bengali culture, so that also leads to them not actually knowing how to just act around girls, which makes them like less confident and more creepy around girls, which doesn't help the situation at all. Now, do I think that some of these stereotypes are based in truth? Yes, of course, all stereotypes are based in truth, but unfortunately it's usually a very small minority of people, or like very outdated concepts, which stick around and actually harm the majority of people. And these stereotypes are negative as well, they're not positive stereotypes, so it leads to a lot of hate, it leads to a lot of prejudice, which is not what we're looking for. We want to counter this, so how can we do that? Firstly, you just need to realize that most people that you will encounter in your life are not going to be racist. Then I do think, racist, non-racist, it's a spectrum. Most people lie somewhere between that. Like, you're not gonna find someone who's extremely hateful and racist, but you definitely won't find someone who has no preconceived notions at all as well. It's probably going to be somewhere in between. Obviously you want to stick to the people with less preconceived notions and people who are less judgmental and prejudicial, if that's the word. Second, you need to see it as a good thing if you're keeping the racists away from you. Trust me, it's a good thing. You're born with a natural body that's going to keep them away from you. You should really be thankful. And while you genuinely might face some discrimination, letting that get to you and letting that dictate how you identify with yourself or how you behave in society is only going to make it worse, because you're going to give in to either those stereotypes, or you're going to become resentful, avoid people, God forbid turn into one of those like ultra insecure identity shunners that no one actually likes, and that they're just not pleasant to be around. Negative stereotypes do exist, and they are unfortunately based in some sliver of truth. However, this doesn't justify it. This just goes to show that stereotypes are something that can change with the times, and we need to be that change. So if you're actually that guy who's not masculine, is not confident, doesn't carry himself well in society, doesn't smell good because he can't take care of his personal hygiene, and you're creepy as well, you are not going to benefit any of us, because you're not going to change those stereotypes ever by being like that. Of course you don't want to be like that. These stereotypes, they're negative things, and for most of us it's not true, but for the people that do actually possess these traits, you need to look at yourself and you need to fix up, mate. As I was saying, your race and the color of your skin is not going to play as big of a part in your life as you think. The more you think is going to play a part in your life, the more it actually will, because you're just always going to be thinking about that. And what kind of sad life is that? Come on, mate. You're a human. Live a human life. Yes, your race will affect you in your life when you go out into the world, because unfortunately other people will see you differently or will treat you differently slightly. Most of the time it's not going to be a big difference, but what matters much more is the kind of person you are, how confident you are, how you carry yourself. That is important, because yeah, cool, there might be some negative stereotypes because you're a brown man. Okay, but when you actually go out in society, carry yourself with confidence, have a masculine frame, you look good, you smell good, and you're not a creepy guy, dating is not going to be an issue, socializing is not going to be an issue. All of these problems are like easily avoidable. I don't want you to take your brownness and see it as a weakness and let it affect you negatively in life, because bro, there's advantages of being brown as well. Use those advantages, and if there's disadvantages, I just told you easy ways to not even feel them.